Hey guys, KRB here, and today we're going to be testing how to make a grilled cheese sandwich by Chowhound. For this recipe we need 1 to 2 tablespoons of softened butter, 2 slices of white bread, and some cheese. Now Laura from Chowhound doesn't say specifically what cheese to use in the video, but I'm going to use some extra sharp cheddar. This is actually my first time making grilled cheese with real cheese. I usually use American cheese, so I'm excited to see how this turns out. Laura also doesn't really specify how much cheese to use, but by the looks of it, it's a lot of cheese. It looks to be like as much as you can stack on the bread at one time. So my first impressions of this is that it's a lot of cheese. It's like a mountain of cheese. Which, hey, don't get me wrong, I'm all about it. I love cheese. I'm just concerned that with this much cheese that it won't all be completely melted by the time we're done cooking it. But we're going to give it a go and see how it does. So here I have a cheese grater with a little measuring cup on the bottom that has milliliters and cups. So that way when I grate, I can get a little bit better idea of how much cheese we'll actually be using for this recipe. We'll also need to be sure to use the side of the grater with the big holes, not the small ones. We're going to grate the cheese until it looks like we have a heaping sandwich full. Now, unless you want to add some skin flakes to your grilled cheese, be careful doing this. I've done this before and wasn't paying attention and grated a piece of my finger. That's a 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. Now that we have the cheese grated, it looks like we ended up with about a cup of cheese, maybe a little bit more than a cup, and used probably about 3 to 4 ounces of the block. This recipe also calls for softened butter, which I don't have. Now, ideally you just want to leave your butter out on the counter for a few hours to soften, but I'm hungry right now, so we'll have to improvise. I'm just going to put the butter in the microwave for 5 seconds, and each time it goes off I'm going to flip it and run it for 5 seconds. And keep doing this until it's softened. Not melted, but just a little softened. Now that our butter is softened, it's time to butter our bread slices. If you were to spread the butter and it doesn't spread easily, soften your butter some more so you don't tear your bread up. Now we're going to take this butter and we're going to butter just one side of both pieces of bread. Now that we have both pieces of bread buttered, it's time to add the cheese. Like I said before, the recipe doesn't really show how much cheese to use, so we're just going to go for it. And by go for it, I mean add all of it. I mean, look at this glorious mound of goodness. Since some of the cheese wouldn't stay on the bread, I cleaned it up around the outside a little bit and ended up with about a half a cup of cheese in my little container here. So total I would say there's about 3/4 cups of cheese on this. And once I have all this cheese cleaned up, I'm going to put the other piece of bread on top of this with the butter side up. Our grilled cheese is ready to be cooked. Now I'm cooking this on medium-low heat, but I preheated the pan by putting on medium and let it warm up for a couple minutes. If your pan is preheated properly, you should have a nice little sizzle as you put the grilled cheese on the pan. After we put the grilled cheese on, we're going to cover it and let it sit for about 2 minutes. And if you don't have the right size cover for your skillet, like I did not have here, just find a lid that's relatively close. It's not a big deal. Just make sure it's not touching the sandwich. And this is going to help to melt the cheese. So after our 2 minutes is up, we're going to flip this bad boy and see what it looks like. Ooh, doggy. Look at this. This looks so doggone good. If the cheese melts properly and this tastes half as good as it looks, I think we're going to be in business. So we're going to go ahead and cover this back up and let it sit for another 2 minutes before we check it again. Alrighty, our 2 minutes are finally up and it's now the moment of truth. Yes, we did it. I can't believe it. We went 2 for 2 on this and it looks absolutely fantastic. Let's check out a little 360 view of this thing. Visually, it is beautiful. I think I'm in love. It's a nice golden brown and it smells so good. Kind of like people, just because it looks nice on the outside doesn't mean it's nice on the inside. So we're going to split this sandwich down the middle and see what we're working with. Here comes the money shot. And it does not disappoint. Have mercy. Look at this. The mountain of cheese melted down perfectly and it's just oozing out the sides. This thing's just begging for me to eat it. Time for the taste test. I'm so excited. Let's listen for this crunch. Whoop, there it is. This sandwich is perfect even down to the crunch. Laura was right. This does take me back to my childhood days. Reminds me of getting out of school and getting off the bus just in time to watch an episode of Home Improvement. Reminds me of going to bed at 8 p.m. rather than being wide awake at 2 a.m. And it reminds me of a time back before I didn't have to pay taxes. All in all, I'd give this recipe 5 stars. This is the best grilled cheese sandwich I've ever had. This sandwich disappeared faster than the money I invested a month before the coronavirus hit. Here's the ingredients list. I went ahead and itemized this list just to kind of give you an idea of how much this cost to make. The 2 slices of bread, 1.5 tablespoons of butter, and roughly 3 ounces of cheese totaled out to about 94 cents. That's pretty cheap considering it's delicious and it takes you back down memory lane. I would rate the difficulty level of this recipe is very easy. As far as time goes, the prep time was about 4 minutes to butter the bread, grate the cheese, and preheat the pan, and it took about another 4 minutes to cook it. So all in all, it took about 8 minutes. That's it for this recipe, but I will certainly be making these again soon. The original recipe video is in the description, so be sure to go and check that out. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check in next time as we try another recipe. I hope you have a fantastic day.